Adding a new switch to your Axia Audio over IP network is incredibly easy when you follow the guides that are provided by Axia Support on their website. And today what we're digging into here is a brand new 48-port Cisco 2960X series switch.
Yep.
Power over Ethernet switch that we are about to deploy across town at our corporate headquarters building, where we're also adding some Axia studios. What's exciting about this and what we wanted to show you is how we have configured our network and are traversing all of our subnets using VLAN tagging on all of our switches across our company.
Yeah, we've had excellent success with this. The ability to spin up an Axia switch port on any of our switches throughout the building has been great for us.
Let's dig in, get a console cable hooked up, and take a look at how we configure these switches.
Sounds good.
So we're going to jump in here to configuring this 2960X Cisco switch for our Axia network. I'm going to power it on now, and then Alex is going to kind of take the lead here on the programming side of things. So the first thing we're going to do is download the guide from AxiaAudio.com and the TELUS Alliance. There's the jet engine of a wow. So,
Oh,
that's intense.
that will calm down eventually.
That is a jet engine of a fan. It's a 48-port PoE version. Yeah, cool your T down. So we've got the guide downloaded, the configuration guide, Alex. And so why don't you talk a little bit about how you're connected here to the switch and then what we're going to do.
So out of the box, obviously the switch has no configuration on it. So the only way to really connect to it without re-IPing your computer and all that kind of stuff is using the Cisco provided console cable. That's as far as I know, that's a proprietary. I don't know if that's a standard RJ45 jack. It might be. Wired a little differently. Wires to serial, which I've got connected. Wires to serial. Now, since most of us are using computers that were made after, 1995, we don't have native serial ports on our computers. So this is just a StarTech serial to USB adapter. It's like, I don't know, $7. Drivers provided. Real quick and simple. That thing needs to...
Yeah, it will.
Quiet down. So
you're going to use... So on our Macs, what do we use as Z-term?
We're Mac people, so for all you Windows people, sorry, for a variety of reasons. But anyway, so we're using Z-term. It's a free utility. You can Google it. Z-term allows you, it's basically like PuTTY for Windows. Almost all the same settings and options.
We'll put links. I'm going to start making a list. We'll put links to the StarTech adapter.
We will actually put links up for you.
Z-term and the PuTTY. These are all great utilities.
All right, so we're going to launch Z-term. I'll select my serial device. Now I've got to change the connection parameters to the standard 9600 N81. Okay. Make this bigger. We're going to lose that text there. Okay, perfect. Still booting, as you can see. You've got to understand, these switches are monster computers. They do a lot of work and a lot of thinking. So for all intents and purposes, this is a pretty hefty processor. It's not a fast boot. So keep it on battery backup in your studio.
Yeah.
Or else you have a lot of downtime. Okay. All right, so what we see on the display currently, it's just about finished booting. We're seeing all the line states. All right, would you like to enter the initial configuration? You don't, especially in the case of Axia. It's going to have you do things that the initial config is not, so we'll say no. And we will get to the default prompt. Has no host name right now. It's called switch. We'll do all that later. So if you go to the Axia website, like I said, they offer config pages for all of the various models of switches that they approve to work.
Like this one, right?
Like this one, absolutely. Sort of. Yeah. We said earlier, this particular model is not on their approved list, but the one that is end of life now. This is the direct replacement, has the same or the correct software image.
Yeah.
I'm 92% sure it's going to work just fine.
All right. Well, let's jump into it then. This should be a good place for a caveat when we're about to jump into this guide, where we are going to configure this VLAN 1 interface. Mm-hmm. In most of your cases, I would venture to say this VLAN 1 that you're going to configure here represents your closed Axia network. That is the recommended and strongly encouraged way to build an Axia network. That is, all of the switches on your Axia network and your devices are all Axia devices. We're not intermingling devices that are not part of the Axia network. So in those cases,
it's totally fine to do that, even preferable.
Yes, the VLAN 1 configuration that we're about to talk about here, you would complete based on your IP scheme of your Axia network.
Correct.
In our case, because, and this is one of the things we want to show you throughout this thing, we have all of our VLANs in our plant, the business LAN, the IP phones, the other subnets that we have, Wi-Fi subnets. All of these are trunked together and all traverse all of our switches. We've applied Axia's QoS to these switches, but they all live together, and on any switch at any port can either be a business LAN port or an Axia device or whatever. So our VLAN 1 configuration represents our business LAN. So that's an important distinction that will matter later the further we go down through this.
That's the kind of stuff we could talk about for hours, because there's so many different ways to do that. Your business LAN doesn't have to be VLAN 1. VLAN 1 has to be on your switch, but you don't even have to use VLAN 1. That's lots of different ways to do this, but in our case, like Chris said, VLAN 1 is our business LAN. So if we jump right into the config, the sheet that Axia provides will give you a little introduction and talk about ways that you can get to the switch. Like I mentioned PuTTY earlier, and we're using Z-term on the Mac. If you get right down here, VLAN 1 configuration. So first thing we're going to do is enter enable mode. Out of the box, there is no enable password. You'll want to do that later, but right now we can get right into enabled mode. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into config mode. All right, now we're able to make changes to the switch. First thing we'll do is get inside the interface. And in this case, it's a VLAN interface, VLAN 1. All right, so you can see it changes to config IF, meaning we're inside of that interface. First thing we'll do is assign an IP address. IP address 192.168, and in our case, we're going to use 3.9 and then subnet mask. Enter, okay. And then we'll issue the no shutdown command. That just ensures that VLAN 1 is on and active. And then we'll end out of config mode. Are you going to say something?
No.
Oh, sounded like it. Okay.
Deep sigh. Sigh for this.
You can sigh all you want. Okay. So now we'll step right on down to the IGMP configuration. This is where we start our QoS molding and modeling. Very important from here on out. I'll even say it. I probably shouldn't say it. We've tried to use Axia devices without applying the proper QoS, and they simply don't work. Like, they don't even work with glitches. They just don't work, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, what you end up with without this QoS, we can't synchronize the clock across the network appropriately, which is a huge deal.
Huge.
I don't mean time of day clock. I mean the AES, the digital clock. We introduced jitter. We introduced things that just make these devices not work. And we also open ourselves up for multicast flooding. Since all of these Axia devices, the Axia audio packets they're multicast. So in other words, they're one to many, or they're everywhere, and what you end up doing is overloading switch ports and routers, and suddenly you find you're dropping packets and the network isn't working correctly. So the QoS that we're going to put in here is very important.
Oops, I see what I did wrong. Okay. VLAN 1 immediately. So I just got started on the IGMP configuration while we were talking there. If you're really interested what these commands mean, you can actually copy and paste one of these commands right into Google, and you'll get a really good explanation. I don't really care. We need them.
That's fair.
It's fun. I know some of them, ones that I'm interested in. Okay. Anyway, so cannot be fine. Enable the VLANs. Oh, yeah, this is totally fine. Some of the VLANs haven't met the required conditions because we haven't really finished the config yet. Ignore that error. IP, whoops. Okay, last line here. Querier timer expiry 205. All right, go ahead.
That's the IGMP stuff. Cool. We can talk through some of this while we're watching the config go by. Really, all that we're doing,
kind of like watching paint dry.
A little bit. We're just going through line at a time through the configuration guide that we found at axiaaudio.com for our specific switch model, and Alex is just simply putting them in based on the guide. It's all, like you said, it's all very important stuff. As we move through this config, we have some decisions coming up that we're going to have to think about ahead of time in terms of the individual switch ports, which we'll get to here on the next page of this config document. But basically, we've got to make some decisions on what ports we're going to designate as trunk ports and what ports are going to be access ports. Now, it's even more complex than that in our case because in addition to thinking about Axia devices on this switch, we're thinking about all of the other devices. This switch, it's kind of cool, is going to be deployed in a brand new studio, which we'll have a video. Actually, we're going to do another video thing on next week from the new studio that we're building downtown. But we have 4 or 5 HD cameras that are powered from this switch and also have all of their control and data over this network. So all of our studio equipment and our computers and phones and everything in that vicinity is going to be, and our Axia stuff is going to be in this switch. So as we move through this config, I've already started thinking through how I think we should break out the ports.
Good,
and so
glad.
I'll have a list of those when we get to that point of how I think we should break it up. And we'll show you how we apply all of those things. I'm also going to have to find a patch cord here shortly so that we can get this on the network so that we can pull our VTP, our VLAN, trunking protocol information that is stored on our Cisco switch network already, where this switch will just, once we give it the username and password, or the domain name, not to be confused with Active Directory domain, but the VTP domain name and password, this switch will then pull all of the VLAN configurations from the other switches that already exist on the network.
Right, and if you are dead set on keeping your Axia environment separate, you can ignore that part of the video. But this is if you want to combine your business and Axia networks, which is cool. Quickly, so I went through and did all the QoS commands there. A couple things I can show you real quick if you're not used to configuring Cisco switches. That'll save you a little bit of time. As you issue commands, whatever that is, as you issue commands, hitting the tab key, well, let me get it back into config mode, sorry. Hitting the tab key will complete the command after you've entered a few characters. It's a time saver, so you don't have to type the whole thing, but also it tells you that is a valid command. If it doesn't finish it, or if it doesn't put a space after it, that means it doesn't know what you're talking about. Also, after you've issued a command, arrow up, and this works in PuTTY as well as ZTerm, will take you back through commands you've already issued. So if you need to issue very similar commands, maybe the end of them is different, like these QoS commands, you can absolutely just mouse up and edit the end of it. And anyway, saves you a little bit of time. And I like that. Okay, so we're done with QoS config. Now we're going to jump down here. This is where we actually start configuring the individual interfaces, as Chris was just talking about. So some of this, well, actually all of this gets applied to all of these interfaces anyway. This is how it distributes QoS. and tells the ports to obey QoS. Block multicast, very important. IGMP snooping, TCN flood, very important. You've got to have that on all your interfaces. Spanning tree port fast, all of that stuff is necessary. So we're going to issue a range command that will apply exactly what you see here. Ooh, big mouse, I forgot it would do that. We'll apply everything you see there to every interface in the range that we specify. So we'll do all of our, well, in this case, it's all of the ports. There are no designated access or trunk ports yet. Although we should leave off.
So here's what I think.
How many trunk ports are we going to need? Just one, right?
Well, technically, no, because we have one that's going to the other switch, one that's going to the power station.
Yep.
I think we should leave 4.
Let's leave the last 4 off then.
Well, are we going to include the, does this one have, or is it just literally 48?
Just 48 in SFP ports. So
We'll ignore the SFPs?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, then. So we'll do range gigabit, whatever it is, gigabit Ethernet 0.
Let me see how the ports are named real quick. So they are 1 high, okay, 10, and then the number. And the last 2 are 10 gigs, so those won't. You want to leave off the last 4, right, as trunks. Okay. So 8, 7, 6, 5. Okay.
44 through 48, right? 44, 45, 46, 47, 4. That's 5. 45 through 48. Yeah.
Right.
45
so
through
our
48.
range will be 1 through
44.
44.
Right. So we're going to do the access ports. Okay.
Whew.
So we're gonna just do this per the guide.
Yep.
And then at the end we'll go back and add our access information for
Yes.
the other parts of our other subnets other than Axia.
Is that right? Yeah. Through, what'd you say?
44.
44. Oops. 44.
Yep.
I did that wrong. Oh, gigabit Ethernet. Boy. Gigabit Ethernet 101 through 44. Okay.
There you
and
go.
you can see it changed the prompt to config IF range, so you know you're talking to all of those ports at the same time. And you can see as I did that show run command, here's all of the interfaces, as if you can see my finger. Here's all the interfaces, but they have no config on them. We'll show you when we're done how they'll all be configured. Okay, here we go. Switch port mode access in this case. Switch port non-negotiate. Multicast. Okay. Let's see. Switch port voice. VLAN. Again, this is all just necessary stuff. If you're really interested on what it does, look it up. I encourage you to. I mean, it's good to learn what this stuff means. But if you don't care, that's all right. Put it in there and you'll be fine. 30, 20, 25, 25. These next commands that I'm issuing are referenced back to the QoS information that we entered earlier. And this just tells the ports to obey the QoS policy. Let's see, priority queue out. Spanning tree port fast. Okay, this did bring up an error, but this is okay. This tells you that you shouldn't be enabling this on trunk ports because it can cause bridging loops. We're not in this case, so you don't need to be concerned with that.
Good, I wasn't.
I was at first. I got over it. Trust COS. Okay. Last thing we'll issue is the no IP IGMP snooping TCN flood. And we have personal experience with that command. Very important. If you don't have that command on your switch ports, every time you plug in a new Axia device, it will, complicated what it's doing in the background, it's basically querying or snooping all the other ports on your LAN for good reason, but it's not necessary. And as a result, it floods the network with data and causes bad Axia glitches. Make sure that's in there. Okay.
Great advice.
So we will exit out of that. And I'm going to go ahead and do a show run. Woo.
You got it.
There we go. The show run command will take you back through your config and let you see what you've applied. And there you can see all of our ports, 1 through 44, now have all of those commands that we just issued. If you don't use the range command, you would have to enter that on every single port, one by one. So use the range command. Okay. Let's get back here. All right, so the next part of the guide is configuring trunk ports. And like we just talked about, trunk ports will be used when you're connecting to another Cisco switch or an Axia device with a built-in switch, such as a power station in our case. Those need to be trunk ports.
Core 16, Core 32, basically most of the engines.
Yep. And presumably, if you had an Axia manufactured switch, I'm sure it's the same situation there. We don't have any experience with those. They look very nice, and I'm sure they are, but haven't used them. So I'm going to go ahead and do an interface range on all 4 of those last ports. We'll get back into config mode. Interface range 1, 0. So we're at 45 now, right? No. Yes, 45 through 48. Okay. I did it again. Gigabit Ethernet. Goodness. 45 through 48. Okay. All right. So now you can see the difference here is we'll say switch port mode trunk as opposed to access. After that, most of the commands are the same. Switch port block multicast.
Hey, you have new mail.
I do. Oh, look, it's from the Dante Via team. I've been experimenting with Ravenna and AES 67. Cool stuff. All right, where was I? SRR, Q, bandwidth, share, 30, 20, 25, 25. And then the shape command. Okay. Priority queue out. MLS, QoS, trust. Okay. And again, the no IP, IGMP, snooping, TCN, flood. I thought about getting a tattoo of that after we made the discovery. All right. So that is it with that.
We did break some things.
Just now?
No.
Oh, okay, back
The
then.
Switch isn't even hooked up to anything right now.
You should never say we did break some things in a radio studio.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. All right, so that's it for the Axia config. If you were going to island your Axia network, that's all you have to do. You can take this, rack mount it, hook it all up, and enjoy the data flow. But in our case, we have some more work to do.
We do. In fact, I'm about to send you something that I want to keep doing here.
Okay.
There's a few other things we can configure really quick. A lot of this we copy and paste from other switches, the stuff that is the same on all of them, like our gateway information, all of this stuff about letting us...
while you're doing that, let's give it a host name.
Yeah, I was going to include that. But you can go ahead. This also has our users on it, but we can actually show this. It's not safe to show this, actually, is it? Because it's our.
What is this?
This is our encrypted secret.
We cannot show that.
So we'll have to put our users in here in a little bit, and our credentials after that. So I'll take those out of the video, out of what I'm about to send you. I think this thing that I send you, you'll be able to just copy and paste. I think.
All right, so I just applied a host name. In our case, this just follows our naming scheme. The first section is the location. In our case, it's our corporate office, so CO, not to be confused with the central office at a phone company. Sorry about that. And then the middle section, I always put the model number of the switch, just for easy recall. And then the last portion is the area of the building that it's in. In this case, it's going to go in master control. Oh, look, I got something from Chris.
Yeah, careful there with all the other messages.
It's hard to say what we text to each other. Okay.
I think that's some stuff that you can probably apply now.
Yep. In fact, let me make sure we can just throw this in a batch. And once I open it in preview.
That should have been openable in text edits.
What happened to it?
I don't know. Oh dear.
Nope. The wrong way to go. It's all the wrong way. Open with text edit. There we go.
Oh, so bad. Everybody's pausing their video now. We'll make sure that's not on the screen.
Put a little blurry.
No, we'll cut to the camera during that.
Fine. Text edit's not opening.
It was really all, the stuff is really all not critical. We can add it later. Hey, you want to tell them the most important part? Did you write mem?
Oh, we haven't yet. Oh my goodness. So, if you got to this point and I told you, oh, you're fine, you can go hook it up now, you'd be writing me letters later with vulgarities in them. If you were to unplug the switch right now, it would completely blow out that config that we just gave it and reset back to default. So once you've finished your config, get out of config mode, get back to enable mode, and issue the write memory command, or WR space MEM. That's how I type it. Hit enter. Now that commits all of those changes that you made to the primary boot image. So now there's no going back, which is good. Now you can power it down.
All right, so just a few more things that we wanted to show you. In fact, Alex,
sorry,
if you want to take just a minute, can you show VLANs for just a minute? I think
sure.
I think it's literally just show.
I'm enabled, right? Yeah.
As you can see, the only VLAN that is really active for us right now is VLAN 1, the default VLAN. We have a bunch of VLANs, like
a whole bunch,
4 or 5.
We do.
We don't want to manually create these on the switch, so we have a thing running on our Cisco environments called VTP.
What's that stand for, Chris?
VLAN.
Oh, dang it, you know.
Something protocol. And
Victor topology.
Okay. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to put in the information to allow it to begin downloading the VTP data. So here's what we're going to type. We're going to, first of all, we're going to get into config mode again. So config T. Now we're going to type VTP space domain space WVRC underscore MGN.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it?
Yep.
Changing VTP pin.
Wonderful. Now, if you don't mind typing VTP space mode space client, we're going to tell it that it's a client.
Done. Setting device to VTP client mode for VLANs.
Get back to config T, and we're going to go VTP space password space, and then we'll cut to our camera of us, and you can try a password or two.
All right. Don't look. Okay, so we've finally configured our VLANs on our new switch. VTP, which we explained earlier, is a huge time saver if you remember how to use it. Now we do. So basically, all we had to do, we told our new switch to become a VTP client of our little VTP environment. We had to give it the VTP password that we had created on our master switch, whenever that was, a year ago or so. And then there's this weird little thing. Maybe there's a timeout, or not a timeout, but maybe there's a time where it pushes VLANs out. We can't get it to see the VLANs immediately. So to kind of force it, we go to our main switch, that's our VTP master, and create an arbitrary VLAN. We use like 77, and then just delete that VLAN. And instantly, the new switch got all of the VLANs without us having to enter them by hand. And you can see, I mean, it wouldn't be a lot of work if we had to do it by hand, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total.
333 made it there, right?
Yes, it did. That's our Axia VLAN.
That's the Axia VLAN. So what we could do now, well, we don't need to. Later, we'll configure the ports when we actually install the switch and we know what we're connecting to the switch ports.
That's the nice thing. It's now that you can talk to the switch, and by the way, we're no longer connected to the switch locally. We're not using a console cable. Now we're using Telnet to talk to the switch across the network. So now that you can do that, as you hook up devices or right before you plug the device in, you can get on that switch, and the command is very simple. It's switch port access VLAN whatever. So if we want this to be an Axia port in our environment, we could say switch port access VLAN 333. Issue that, and then that port is now an Axia port. Same way if we wanted it to be, we have a Wi-Fi VLAN. So we could say switch port access VLAN 35. Issue that, and now anything that's plugged into that port will get a .35 address via DHCP. So that's quick and easy. You don't really have to think about that beforehand. Just as you plug devices in, or like I said, right before you plug them in, issue whatever VLAN you want that port to be, and you're in good shape.
Very good. And we're going to write mem again before we leave so we don't lose VLANs. And that switch is now ready to get rack ears put on it.
Rack and stack.
Over at the corporate headquarters. And we'll show you some of that next week.
Yep.
The new studio build out, and maybe we'll even show deploying a power station with it and hooking some stuff up to the switch. So, yeah, we'll do that next week. Yeah, that's how to configure a switch. So thanks for watching.
Thanks for sticking through. It's not very exciting, but it's important.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye, everybody.